Dear all, welcome to Session 6, Research on and Research with Technology in Education. This is a blended session including 2 hours online learning and 1 hour face-to-face presentation and discussion. The online learning part, I will prepare this video for you to understand some basic concepts. What is research? What is educational research? What is ICT education research? And why there's a need to do the ICT education research? How to do it? And finally, we discuss your opinions, and you will be asked to upload your reflections online. In the face-to-face section, you will present your ideas and share with the other group members. What is research? Research is a process of steps used to collect and analyze information or data in order to increase our understanding of a topic or issue. So 3 major components of research are process of steps, information and data, and our knowledge or understanding. So the process could be interview, survey, observation, experiment. The information or the data are coming either from students, from teachers, from clinical experiments on the animals, on the patients. But the purpose is to increase our knowledge, what's going on and why so. So it's to improve our understanding of some topics or the issue. The issue could be educational topics, medical topics, physics, science, etc. For education research, here is the definition I got from American Education Research Association. American education research is the scientific field of study that examines education and learning process that human attributes, interactions, organizations, and institutions that shape educational outcomes. Scholarship in the field seeks to describe, understand, and explain how learning takes place throughout a person's life and how formal and informal contexts of education affect all forms of learning. Education research embraces the full spectrum of rigorous method appropriate to the questions being asked and also drive the development new tools and methods. This sounds very abstract and maybe hard to follow. So here I divide that into 3 components. First, the education research investigate all aspects or any aspects of education, and it is rigorous and systematic investigation. So these aspects include teacher, teaching methods, students, maybe parents, or other important stakeholders in the classroom, outside the classroom, etc. Second, research conducted to investigate the behavior patterns in students, teachers, and other participants in schools, maybe outside schools. So the behavior patterns, including their learning process, teaching behavior, student-teacher interaction, students how they use the ICT tools, how they do the online discussion. Finally, is the formal systematic application of the scientific method to study the education problem. There has to be certain methods, as I said. It could be interview, it could be survey, it could be observation, or it could be some experiment. So these procedures applied to the problem systematically to investigate those problems. Now I want you to stop, pause for a while and think, what is education research? To do education research, what you need to think about. First, you have to have a research problem. It is a problem. Sometimes in my previous experience, the students said, okay, I want to research on iPad. Then I ask, why iPad? The student might say, okay, I think iPad is better than the traditional classroom. But it's still not a problem. It's just a phenomena. Why you think iPad is important? What iPad can bring? So you have to define. There's a problem there of either in the traditional classroom not using iPad, or what's the advantage of iPad could bring. Second, why you think research would help you to address this problem. So you have to seek the affordance from the research, why it can help you to answer this question. So why, for example, you observe the classroom could help you to answer this problem. Why you send out a survey could help you to address this problem. Why you interview the teacher maybe could help you to understand this problem. So you have to think which way is the best and why so. The third is you need to think is about the contribution in the research. Why this problem is important. To help you to improve the practice, to help you to understand how students learn, to help you for the policymakers to make decisions. So why? So what? The fourth, what are the determining factors in developing a research design and associated methods and instruments? Here, it's very important. You have to pick up, as I said, the most appropriate instruments and the design. So will that be a qualitative design or quantitative design? In order to do that, what are the major factors, etc.? Here, in order to understand this area better, we will offer that course, MITE 6025, in next semester. Some teachers use some textbook. Here are the two major ones. The left one I used for my earlier teaching. The education research competencies for analyze and applications. So the other one, educational research, qualitative, quantitative, and mixed method. We will talk more about later on about the different methods, and of course it will be covered in the next semester in 6025. Here I want to emphasize one component is about why we are doing research. Some of you might say, okay, I'm not going to do MPhil or PhD. Why I need to do a research? What's the importance, significance? So research, not necessarily to be in the laboratory or to be in a you have to do in a master or PhD. It's everywhere. So for example, your company asks you to investigate, okay, if it's worthwhile to develop certain new method. So how would you know if the new some method is more valuable or more efficient than the other? So you will need certain methods to test or to check. This is research. So the purpose of the research, of course, in the traditional academic field is to understand, to add more knowledge of this field. It could be address the gaps in certain knowledge or theory. So for example, if we only know the primary students and the university students, so what's missing? Maybe the middle school students. We want to know more about how they use certain pedagogy to improve their learning. It's something missing, so we want to invest this group to fill in the gap. The second is the expanse of our knowledge. So we know something, but not enough. We want to know more. The third is about the replication of the knowledge. So very often we research something in just very particular population. And so we want to know, okay, how about other population? Will they have the similar effect? So it's kind of the replication or generalization. The fourth one is to add the voice of individuals to knowledge. In most research, we research, we investigate, okay, a group, but sometimes some individuals' knowledge or experience is also very important. So this is to the first reason is to add the knowledge or the theory to our understanding. The second is easy to understand, is to, particularly in education research, is to improve our practice, especially for important for the teacher. So the educators can gain new ideas of their job. So when we do the research, that when we should inform the teachers, okay, what they can do, what's the new methods they can use, what's the new tools they can use to improve their teaching. For example, now very often the inquiry-based learning, critical thinking, these ideas introduced to schools based on the research. Now teachers adopt them in their practice. Second is the teachers or the educators can gain new insights into the approaches. So they might doing something without understanding why so. So involve teachers into the research can help them to understand better of their practice. The third is educators can connect with other educators. So it's pretty much about the community of practice. By doing something and also knowing others are doing the similar stuff, teachers can be connected and communicate with each other. The third is for the policy making. For very often, the research has very limited implications for the policy making. Nowadays, this situation has improved. So the research, the significance of the research should and could allow people to weigh different perspectives on certain issue. So for example, to implement which strategy in ICT education is maybe the policymakers should think about. So the research could provide different options for them to see which way is better, particularly, for example, in particular context. In Hong Kong, we might get the information from Singapore, from Taiwan, from US, from Europe. So when these all different kinds of practice or research findings are provided, the policymakers can evaluate them and finally make maybe the best one for Hong Kong. And also the research can enable people to make the informed decision regarding the policy. Like the examples I recently provide you about the OECD report. So some find, okay, the ICT use in schools actually negatively impact on the students' performance. So this will have a huge implication for the policymakers. They can choose to ignore, because the research maybe show only the appropriate use of ICT, not necessarily the amount of time using ICT is the most important. But also others maybe think, okay, maybe the traditional measurement and is not what we look at. What we care more is that kind of critical thinking skills, 21st century skills like ICT bring. So this kind of research will enable people to make informed decision making in, for example, ICT education. Here, I want to introduce briefly of the process of doing the research. All these steps will be covered in the next semester. There are usually 6 steps in doing the research. As I just introduced, first you have to have a research problem. It's not an issue. Say, I am interested in MOOC, I want to do MOOC. I'm interested in the flipped classroom, I want to do this topic. You have to identify the problem of this issue. Then, to understand more of this issue, you have to go to the literature review, review a lot of previous research, maybe the policy regarding this issue. Then, after reviewing all the research, you have a specific purpose. So, for example, take the example of the MOOC. You might say, okay, I want to investigate how to improve or reduce the drop-out rate in MOOC by providing online scaffolding or improving their peer-to-peer communication or the teacher-to-student communication. Then in order to address or investigate the problem, you have to collect the data. The data including, for example, online performance data, online discussion, or you send out a survey, ask students' opinions, or you observe the classroom making notes. So finally, you pick up certain methods to analyze data. Could be quantitative methods, could be qualitative method. And finally, you report your findings and provide implications for your study. To do a research, there's one important issue you have to consider, is the ethical issues. It's particularly important if it involves, of course, human subjects. And so for students who will do the research, pick up the dissertation, you have to pay close attention to this. So why we have to have the ethical considerations in research? First is to respect the rights of the participants. You have to respect their privacy. They have to be informed what kind of data you collect from them, and will their identity be disclosed, etc. The second one, if you want to go to a school, you also need to respect the environment or the restrictions of your research side. Okay, you cannot make noise and you cannot be too intrusive in the research side. And thirdly, you have to make sure you report the research fully and honestly. That's very ethical. So for example, you expect something to be found, but you didn't. But you don't want other people feel you fail your study, then you change your data and research something different. Or you have your research represent different opinions, but you are very in favor of one particular opinion, then you just delete or disregard other opinions. So that's also unethical. Here is the website you can visit from our faculty, provide detailed information about the ethical issues. It's particularly important for the students in the next semester. No matter you are going to do the project or the dissertation, you have to check closely. For the project, the procedure is relatively simple, but you still need time to submit your application and get approval before you run your study. The dissertation, I think the requirement is a little bit more. So you have to check carefully in order to make sure your research or the project can be done on time. Here, I think you can visit this website. This is from my account. In our MITE program information 2005, in session 6, it provides the topics. Let me see. The topics of the research or the projects. You can go. Let me see where they are. Okay, here. Number 6, the topics, proposed topics here. So MIT proposed independent topics 2015 and 16. So I'm reading just some examples from, let me see, Where is mine? Well, here we list different topics from different teachers. Okay, mine is here from 38. The implications of massive open online courses for higher education in Hong Kong or China. The impact of new social media on students. Learning with new digital media. E-learning in China. E-learning corporations in China. Education applications adopted in schools. Learning with apps in the informal context, etc. So you can pick up those topics and also see who is the supervisor. Then you can talk with them and proceed your project or dissertation. Here, this one lists all the related areas or the topics of ICT in education. It's not necessarily from our division or the faculty, the supervisors. You can see like possible areas of research and development in IT education covers these dimensions. To put it simple, remember you have 3 specialisms: research design, ICT design for education, e-learning, and e-leadership. You can approach this the ICT education from these dimensions. So it could be very technology oriented, for example, technology integration, or it could be very human oriented, teachers and technology, students and technology. And it could be learning focused, for example, learning process research with technology. Or it could be like from the leadership perspective, focus on the schools, communities, or for example the cross-disciplinary or the cross-cultural, cross-national research. Here I provide some examples. So for example, if you're interested in the teachers and the technology, you might want to see, okay, how the ICT change the teacher's pedagogy and how the teacher integrate the ICT into their classroom. Or teacher could be as a teaching designer or learning designer, and how the teacher use ICT to facilitate the student teaching, and how the teacher use ICT to administrate their classroom, etc. So if you're interested in the students, so it could be how the students use ICT, how different types of students use ICT. It could be like English as second language students, could science students use ICT, math students, or it could be adult learners, etc. Or ICT used the informal context or the informal context. So these graph provide you like dimension, which part you're interested, and what kind of the interaction between ICT and the different aspects as we introduced earlier. Is it the teacher, the students, classroom, school, leadership, the principal, etc., or in which context? Here I give you a very brief introduction of different types of the research. In general, we have 2 types of research. One called qualitative research design, and the other is the quantitative research design. In one of the papers, I provide you education research, some basic concepts and terminology. You have like more ideas by reading this. And also, of course, this topic, the research classification, will be covered in detail in the next semester. Here, quantitative, I just gave you a brief introduction. Quantitative method usually focus on the research that we can get the numbers. So it could be the experimental research. They test their hypothesis. It has the relational relationship research to see the correlation between different variables, or the cause-effect relationship research to see if something lead to the other, the change. Some example could be, remember we have the MOOC and the SPOC, right? And it is hypothesized the small personalized open learning maybe is more adaptive or more useful for the students. So we want to check if students' performance or the perceptions on the SPOC is higher than the MOOC. So we collect their online performance, we collect their participation, we might even send them surveys to ask their opinions. So these are the kind of research defined as quantitative research, and we use the test the hypothesis, and we see if one is better than the other. So these are the types of research in general, and on the Moodle I will upload several of my papers, and you can see the different type of research I used in the ICT education research. There is also limitations of research in education. So first is about the theory. Very often the research, there's a lack of the theoretical framework for the research design. As I said, for example, people are interested in the technology use, and they just compare one classroom with technology and the other without. So why so? What you're looking at? What's the theoretical framework behind this kind of comparison? Some researchers, they're not clear. The second is the research studies have been mostly at a descriptive level, lack of the study that refine and generate theories. Again, it's related with theory. They find something, but they don't know how to connect that with the theory or the knowledge. So they might just feel maybe they find, okay, one class is better than the other as to their performance. So why so? There is a lack of the explanation in that. The third is the lack of the research-based development of tools and the process for use by practitioners. They just, for example, people are interested in iPad. They just hand in the iPad to the students. But how they use it, why they use it, and how to design the practice of using them is not quite clear. The second limitation is in the practice. For research to transform practice in schools, findings should be accepted by the education, which means the teachers really appreciate the research findings. They understand and they find it's useful. And the second is, even there, maybe sometimes some teachers find they're useful, but this kind of innovation or the revolution maybe is not accepted by the school culture. The school are very conservative, they don't want to make change. So this is also the limitation. The third, I think, is very important, is the coordination between the research practice and the policy. Very often there is like the isolation of the research practice and the policy making. Researchers don't understand the requirement or what's happening in the practice, and the teachers don't understand what's reported on the journals, and the policymakers don't understand, again, what's the research implications for the practice and for the decision making. Okay, pretty much that's all for this session, and you can get more information by reading the two articles that I provide. One is What is Research by Clive Opie, and this is a short one. I wish you can finish them all. The second is 50-page something, Education Research, Some Basic Concepts and Terminology. And I wish you can at least finish chapter 1 and chapter 2. Once you finish them, remember, I want you to think about, okay, what is ICT education research? And I want you to identify something relevant to you, why you come to this program, what kind of problem you want to solve in ICT education. So first, what is the problem you want to investigate? Why you want to do so? And finally, how would you plan to do that? How you plan to do that may be difficult because you haven't acquired the knowledge or skills to run an experiment. But by reading those brief description, for example, the type of the research, you might have some idea, at least if it's a qualitative study or a quantitative study. Okay, we will discuss more in our face-to-face discussion.